Growing up, I was always curious about what my dad's life was like on the open road. He'd been a truck driver for over 40 years, and obviously longer than I've been alive. I always worried about him and was very excited whenever I would see him pull up in the carport, and I would usually run out and give him a big hug. I decided to go on a journey with him to do a delivery for lemons for Chick-fil-A. So we took Route 66 and went to Riverside, California. Along the route, we saw a lot of landscapes, a lot of traffic. Overall, it was a wonderful experience, but it was nice to finally be able to see from like a truck driver's perspective of what my dad experienced on a weekly basis. I wanted to document everything. My dad talked a lot about, sunsets that he would see and, just how beautiful the land was across America. And I just wanted to really try to document everything that he saw and try to get it from his perspective if I could. One thing that kind of stood out to me the most was whenever looking at the landscapes is, my dad would always see these landscapes from his perspective with power lines going through them, but never really got out to actually enjoy these mountainous views or, these beautiful red rocks that we were passing going 70 miles per hour. It was hard for me to understand how someone could enjoy this life where you don't really get to stop and enjoy these beautiful sceneries. My dad was getting pretty tired. He can only drive for 11 hours, so we actually decided to go ahead and pull on over to these truck stops that were just across on the New Mexico-Arizona border, where would be a place for us to grab a bite to eat and get some rest. He talked a lot about the just the different sunsets and how many sunsets he's seen, and he's always just been fascinated by that and all the different colors. So I don't know, I just wanted to try to capture that in my imagery while I was documenting my dad. The truck stops, overall, they seemed pretty lonely. There were a lot of 18-wheelers around, but there were barely any sightings of people, and even inside, they had these kind of sitting areas where you could sit around and watch TV and eat food, and they had like pool tables and even had arcade games, which kind of felt a little nostalgic to me. I don't know, me and my dad used to go to a pizza place that this kind of reminded me of, which sounds kind of weird at being a truck stop, but they would always have the claw machines where you could get one of the stuffed animals, and I used to always play those as a kid. And I remember my dad would always bring me little toys like that home whenever I was just a kid, and I would get so excited to see what he would bring me every week. Inside the truck stops, they really didn't have anything that was very appetizing, which kind of makes me think a lot about, the struggles that my dad had as a truck driver. He would be on this constant weight gain, and I think part of that was just the food that he was being introduced to. It was just always a bag of chips or donuts or anything that you could grab that was just more of a snack food and not an actual healthy meal. They had showers, but usually showers cost. Most of the truckers just spent most of their time inside of their trucks, either cooking a meal, watching TV, or just resting up to hit the road early for the next day. The Truckers Chapel, and I just, I thought that was interesting because my dad was always a little bit religious growing up. But I never knew that they had trucker chapels at truck stops. So that was really interesting to see. So I thought I'd ask him about it, and his only comment was, well, truck drivers, they're always on the road, and a lot of times they don't have time on the weekends to go to church. Most of the times they want to spend time with their families, so they have these truckers' chapels where you can go and pray and just kind of, meditate. As I approached my dad's truck, I noticed he was doing something. Wasn't sure what, but most likely it was preparing to go to sleep. He sleeps in the back of his 18-wheeler. There's like a cab area. A few hours had passed. My dad had already fallen asleep. I had dozed off quite a bit, but with all the truck drivers coming in and out, it was a pretty noisy place. I'm assuming because my dad's been doing this for so long that he's pretty used to the sound. I woke up and I decided I wanted to go and kind of take pictures of the outside area just to see what was going on. As I woke up, there were just a lot of lights everywhere from all the trucks around that were coming in. But everything just still seemed so lonely. By the time I got back to the truck, my dad had actually woken up. It was probably around 4 a.m. So I asked him what he was doing up so early, if I had woken him up. He said, no, this is normally the time that I wake up. I need to start preparing for our day. We've got a long road ahead of us, so. He began to make us breakfast. My dad has all kinds of tools and gadgets to, make toast and cook bacon and even make coffee. As the sun began to come up, I asked my dad what he normally does, to kind of prepare for, his travels going forward. He said, well, we have to go and complete this checklist. So he grabbed a hammer and started walking around the truck. From here, he just kind of banged around on the sides, checked the tires. He told me once about a story that there was a homeless guy actually underneath his 18-wheeler. And even though he's supposed to do routine checks, there was this one time he almost didn't do it, but decided he should get out and check. And sure enough, there was someone underneath there. As we began to hit the road again, I started noticing all the details of the truck. So things like the mirrors, the inside of the cab, just things that my dad uses on a regular basis. I asked him what his biggest fear was on the road, and he said that, just watching out for other people and, making sure that you're not going to get in an accident. He's had several near-death experiences in his 40-plus years of truck driving. So he's very cautious when he's driving and very aware of his surroundings. We started heading towards Riverside so we could drop off our load. But on the way, we decided to go and take another break. So we actually stopped at a graveyard. And in the graveyard, you can find just abandoned trucks that have caught on fire. So my dad talked a lot about the safety on the road and also how dangerous it can be. We wanted to try to make it to Los Angeles kind of early just because traffic-wise, it can get really bad. My dad has sometimes spent hours in traffic. Of course, we ended up hitting traffic on the way, so we actually ended up pulling over, and he decided to go ahead and start cooking again. This was probably around lunchtime, so we decided to take a short break. He just told me a little bit more about his life on the road and the struggles that he's faced along the way. One thing about my dad is, growing up, he was always obese, so he always had to stay up to date on his medication and made sure that he took his pills daily. He always had to make sure that he got plenty of rest. So sleeping in the back of the cab was something he did on a regular basis. He would usually drive sometimes 5 hours, pull over, take a nap, and then get back at it. We decided to wait a little bit longer just for traffic to clear. By this time, it was already getting kind of close to dark, but traffic had cleared, so we started making our way. Some of the things along the way that my dad pointed out were just how California is kind of a major source for like a lot of our goods, like produce. So as we were driving, we noticed these workers that were working in the field, and he was really excited to show me that. So he pointed out the window, and I quickly took a photo. One thing I asked my dad is, if he had ever seen the Hollywood sign, because I knew he had been to California several times, and he had actually never seen it before, but on this particular trip, he was pretty excited that he saw it for a quick second. Just kind of a good example of, life of a truck driver. You pass all of these things that people talk about all the time, like the Hollywood sign, and he had never seen it, even though he had been to California thousands of times. We finally made it to the Sunkist factory, where we were there to pick up lemons to deliver to Chick-fil-A. My dad is actually not able to load his own trucks because of his injuries from the past, like his surgeries. He had 2 knee replacements, so he has guys at the factory that know him really well that actually load the trucks for him. The only thing he's really allowed to do is strap everything down and just do his safety checks. Overall, my dad, he shared a lot with me on this trip, and it was just great to kind of see some of the different landscapes that he had talked about along the way, and it was just nice to kind of get a perspective of what life is like as a truck driver while you're on the road.